This is a statement from Donald Trump, quote, "We have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran," etc. I agree.
Yes, folks, Tulsa, Oklahoma there speaking for us all as they greet that news with no more war. And I'll just underline for Democrats, they didn't say no more unconstitutional war. They said no more war.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do with this war shit. Hello, David.
Hey, Matt. No, I mean, that was a video that really, revived some of my hope for this country at a time when, very much needed. And it's a good reminder. And I think it's a kind of thesis of this project. And I think hopefully everyone's political project listening to this is the belief in the kind of just and moral aspects of the American people and how we need to find ways to harness that to fight for the better world and the world that we deserve. So really, really just beautiful to see something like that at that Bernie rally in Tulsa. And honestly, the scenes we were seeing from all of them across Texas as well, very similar scenes.
Yeah. And, again, like our thesis, it's not the problem in the people. In fact, Trump won, picking up a mantle that the Democrats were content to cast aside in terms of being anti-war. Kamala was talking about how Iran was the scariest country in the world. I don't know if those are exact words, but that's pretty much it. And Hakeem Jeffries in Joe Biden's lame duck period was talking about how Iran has never been weaker. We have to keep the pressure up on them. Chuck Schumer's only complaint, his complaint a month ago was that Trump was doing diplomacy with Iran.
Yeah,
and so
Taco Trump.
The people are anti-war, and it is relevant to politics if one of the parties decides they want to make it relevant, if their donors, particularly a certain lobby, is okay with making it part of their politics. If not, then whatever opportunistic fascist like Donald Trump that sees a good marketing slogan, yeah, he'll be anti-war for just long enough as he can, use it to his advantage. And that's what happened.
100%. And folks, we're going to be talking about this obviously a lot. We have a jam-packed show for y'all. Reminder, we are doing these summer post games. So the post game comes up immediately after the main show tonight. Open to all, but you can support us in the program by signing up at patreon.com/leftreckoning to get access to all of our bonus episodes, which are very, very good and very exciting. You won't want to miss them. And also, you help us keep this program going, which means a lot to Matt and I, and hopefully all the people out there who've been listening to us over the years. We're going to be talking Iran. We're going to be talking with Eskandar in just a little bit, kind of getting an in-depth look about Iran, both internally in Iran, how people are reacting to these strikes, also the relationship that Iran has had with other countries in the region. We are also going to take a little bit of a look at, the fail son himself of Iran, Reza Pahlavi, who is the son of the Shah and is a very despicable and odious character who's been kind of cheerleading the bombing campaign by Israel on Iran. We'll also be talking with Derek Davison, everyone's a good friend for American Prestige Pod, somebody who we always bring on the program when things are bad. It's always nice hearing his wisdom, though I wish we had a nicer reason to bring him on sometimes. And I
just want to say, like, when I have to download and listen to a Derek Davison podcast, the second it hits the feed, something's going on in the world. It's like, okay, I need to get the dispatches, the FX dispatch this afternoon to see exactly where America's fucking up.
And folks, you're not going to want to miss the other side of the show. One, we'll be taking questions from our patrons only. You sign up at patreon.com/leftreckoning. Matt and I are going to watch this meltdown press conference. So for people who don't know, here in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott vetoed SB 3, which was the THC ban that we've been covering on this program. And Dan Patrick, who is people who've been listening to the show know, was kind of leading the charge. He had a kind of meltdown press conference the other day, where he accused Abbott of nothing less than wanting to legalize marijuana across the board in the state of Texas, and also asked some big philosophical questions like, where's all this weed coming from? Could it be coming from the terrorists, from the cartel? And you're not going to miss it. It's a really, really special meltdown.
The THC crashout is amazing.
So, folks, that and plenty more tonight. But before we get to all that, Matt, let's get to this top story. I see you got a little sticker there. What's that all about?
I just went and voted for our boy Zohran Mamdani to be mayor of New York, at least the Democratic Party's candidate for New York. I think he has a good chance to win. I don't predict these things. I don't really pay attention to polls. I know that they've been closing up, but it feels like he ran a really good campaign. And I'm very excited. I was very excited to vote for him. The ranked choice thing, I'll take instruction on that. So I voted, I did vote Zohran Lander Zelnermeyer, who I'm frankly not overall happy with, but he got in there late because he started going anti-Cuomo. A Blake also, and then Adams just because I needed a fifth. Mm-hmm. But those first three that I mentioned, sub Zohran, I am happy at the way this campaign went from a socialist running alongside a bunch of progressives. There are certain things that say, I disagree with on Brad Lander on certain issues, but and I think some of those should be returned to at less fraught times. But I think it is very good to see the model for how this can be done, which, as Womenaker says, is kind of, you got to bend the knee to the actual left at a certain point. And Zohran was able to do that in a way that was extremely impressive. I think, regardless of if he wins this tonight or not, I'm just super impressed by him as a model politician in navigating a lot of this. I mean, extremely hostile to the point of being like virulently racist environment he's negotiating.
I mean, insane. Everybody's seen, the kind of fixation on asking him specifically questions about Israel, bringing up his Muslim background. I mean, it has been kind of shocking to just see how much Islamophobia is still a major factor in American politics and in New York politics. But as you said, the thing about Zohran is, he's always been able to really rise above it. I mean, this is somebody who has just a tremendous political talent. But also, I one thing that I've really appreciated watching this campaign from afar mostly, but last week I was in New York, visiting you and some folks, and I got to see, the kind of energy, everywhere I went, there's somebody talking about Zohran. I mean, I even went to one of my favorite restaurants in New York City, a Spicy Village, and, saw that little Zohran poster, greeting me when I walked in. So it was really, really nice. But in addition to the enthusiasm, I mean, one of the things that we've played a lot of clips of his on this program, because Zohran has done an incredible job of being able to be like a committed socialist, a committed democratic socialist, never shying away from that, by the way. Even a lot of the, the kind of, S-tier democratic socialist politicians, sometimes would kind of dance around the democratic socialism's questions, being like, oh, some people might be upset by this word, but to me it means this, and that. No, Zohran's always been very affirmative about, it's like, oh, that is my politics, and I think these are good politics, and other people should, share these politics and get involved in the organizations that promote them, mainly the DSA. But in addition to all of that, like, he has been somebody who has never backed away from kind of left-wing political positions, but avoided all of the kind of big ultra leftist pitfalls. Questions on policing. I think his answer on I believe it was the Breakfast Club, was phenomenal, right? Where he's talking about, hey, here are all the things that we want to see. Here are the things that we want to see change in the city. But yeah, we're not talking about, big things like defund the police, right? Not walking away from all of the kind of radical things that people would like to see when it comes to policing in places like New York and nationally, but also not kind of embracing, these kind of like ultra online politics. On another thing, Israel Palestine. I mean, to hear anybody attack him on that issue from the left is just frankly untethered from reality. His answer every single time he got asked, I thought was perfect, because he said, I believe in a state that has equal rights for all, and was a perfect way to kind of flip that question around on the questioner every single time. Because, well, if that's a problem, what is the state of Israel that you are saying that we should be supporting, right? If saying that we should have equal rights for people is somehow in conflict with Israel, well, what does that say about the state? It was a great way of flipping that question around, when oftentimes I feel like, leftists and politicians in general will find themselves on the back foot, right? Because they're afraid of, being called, for example, like a terror sympathizer or something like that, or somebody who wants to, see like the eradication of people. And people sometimes have really struggled with figuring out how to answer that question. And this is just somebody who answered it super well without watering down the message, right? And that is something that I would just like to see more and more of from socialist politicians across the country, is an ability to kind of avoid the alienating performative stuff that has really dominated a lot of left-wing political organizations in the past 5 years, without turning your back on political radicalism, turning your back on socialism, turning your back on working class politics. And this has been a masterclass in really how to do that. And lastly, I'll just say, and have a lot of fun with it too. I mean, this is somebody who is, it's interesting to listen to him speak. It's interesting to see the meetings, the rallies and all of that. I mean, politics should be optimistic, fun, and hopeful. And it's a good thing to be reminded of that, because again, we've been sort of missing that in, I think, socialist politics for a few years now.
Yeah, the Colbert thing, which we're not going to play because Viacom will, or whoever owns.
Yeah, they will destroy us. It's so ridiculous. I mean, sorry, not to get sidetracked on this, but it is actually ridiculous at this point. This is the media, right? This is just as part of the media as any other platform out there, any other medium out there, and that we still are existing in under this kind of rule set where Matt and I, organizations like the Majority Report, aren't able to kind of comment on major things. This is a clip that everyone's talking about, right? The day before the election. The fact that we can't talk about it openly on this program because a corporation's going to put the hammer down on this is a big problem for democracy. Anyway, that's not the focus, but it's worth staying.
No, it actually violates the First Amendment, but we don't care about that anymore. But I'll read the quote. This is the same question. Does the state of Israel let me slow down. Does the state of Israel have the right to exist? Colbert asked that 4 minutes in. The first minute was them coming out on stage. The second couple minutes were them saying, yeah, we're endorsing each other. Isn't that cool? And then he gets right into this question. So, does the state of Israel have the right to exist? Zohran says, yes, it has the right to exist and a responsibility also to uphold international law. Colbert responds, okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Now, the elephant in the room is not. What do you mean by uphold international law? What ways might our audience be interested to know that Israel is in violation of international law that might make this conflict more legible to them? No, that's not the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is that Jews are supposedly afraid of Zohran. When if you look at the polling, he's actually doing about as well as you would expect. Not proportionally speaking, he's not low at all. And so who is really saying this? Well, it's people like Cuomo. It's people that are putting words in his mouth. And again, like you said, the not backing down of it. I saw one quote where he's like, it's not my job to police rhetoric. I'm trying to be mayor of New York. And, I mean, then that's minute 4 through 9 where they talk about Israel and how, and to his credit, Zohran and Lander, and to his credit as well, they do sort of model a good dialogue in here in a way that is constructive, in a way that's never seen on this sort of mainstream platform. It's distrusted. It's shown as naive. So that those two guys can at least model that. It was necessary that Brad was there, and it's a really depressing comment on society that he needed to be.
100%. And look, so we'll see what ends up happening with the final results of the Zohran campaign. I believe if you are listening to this and you live in New York City, you still can vote, right? I believe the polls close there at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Yep.
So you still have an opportunity to go out and do it. And you should rank Zohran number one. I think it's going to take a little while to get the results here. But no matter what happens, I mean, this has been a campaign that has really, I think, sparked a lot of exciting conversations all across the country, and people are really engaged in that kind of optimistic democratic socialist politics that has for a long time felt like that energy has really dissipated. Bernie and the AOC and the Great Kassar rallies have sort of brought a little bit of it back, but one of the questions there has been, where is that energy going to be directed? And this is something that you can definitely point to, say, hey, this is a way that you can fight for a better future right now. So we're looking forward to seeing this, and I have a feeling that we'll be talking about Zohran a lot more in the next few weeks. But before we get to our other stories, Matt, we did want to talk about another piece of good news, which is, one of the heroes in the fight for justice and morality in this country and globally, just was freed from their camp, which is a huge victory for everybody. Do we have this? Did we have a clip, or did we just have the image here?
I'm gonna pull up a clip here. I had one and then I navigated away from the tab. But here is this video of Khalil. Oh, here's the picture. Yeah, well, let's put this up here. Here it is. This Mahmoud Khalil. And I'll just say, so immediately meets his kid for the first time. Detained since, when was it? March 8th?
Yeah.
March 8th.
I know.
A whole child born in that time. And he comes out and he says, among other things, even if they would kill me, I would still speak up for Palestine. Now, I believe him because he was immediately, he went straight to Colombia to call them out for their collaboration. And that there's no finer word for it. Their collaboration with the Zionist forces that put him in that detention center since March 8th.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, it's something that is just tremendously powerful. As you noted there, like, this is somebody who does have this kind of, I want to use the word superhuman, because I'm so impressed by his courage, by his commitment to the fight. One, facing down this detainment that he's dealt with, but two, like the kind of personal tragedy and personal difficulty that he's gone through, and still going right back to the front lines and continuing this fight, instead of, as we were talking about off screen, there'd be a lot of reason to think it's very justifiable to kind of like hang out for a couple weeks before getting right back out there. And he did
like a gap year.
And this is something that you should respect. Yeah, exactly. This is something that you should respect, but it's also something that I think we have to always be able to be, engaged enough that we can recognize that, like, there is this kind of courage all around us, and like, this is somebody who is doing it that should inspire you. But this is also a strength that many people around us, have, and are willing to do what they need to when push comes to shove. I'd also add, please go.
Well, I just to underline that, like, I think I've been so impressed by all, especially the student activists this entire time, genuinely heroic, in my opinion. And then to have the entire state come down on you in a way that, if you would have described it months earlier, people would have said you were being hysterical, or like they're going to go after people for writing op-eds or having done anything with UNRWA, like, and to face that down. And again, like I keep saying this, but you read anything Khalil put out from that detention center, and that's an anthology that goes in an anthology for political prisoners. And and he's not the only one, but he is exemplary for. They picked the wrong fucking people to go after, and that's, like you said, like, this is there, like, and it's inspiring because if they can pick wrong that way, that means they're in a minefield with this stuff.
No, they think that they can get people to be silent and be afraid. And also, certainly I think it's worth shouting out AOC, who's in that clip there. I mean, many of the videos, I mean, she has been somebody who has been at the forefront. A lot of people, sometimes they pay so much attention to like what they're seeing on the computer, and that means like social media stuff, that they forget that there is like a whole behind the scenes thing. And when it comes to whether or not, somebody like AOC has been a champion for him during this whole detainment, both very publicly, very, very publicly, and also behind the scenes. And yeah, I think it makes plenty of sense that he would want her to be with him when he returns back to those kind of front lines. So shout out for the continued support there, because I think it's important. On that, unless I know we got a lot to get to, so I just wanted to keep one up, because this is going to get completely buried. I think in the next few days, just because of the news cycle, because of everything that's going on. But absolutely bizarre, the fact that what we saw with Trump with this bombing of Iran, something that was an unconstitutional act, that you got no movement from congressional Democrats on impeachment, on justice, against the Trump administration for what they did, not only like to Iranians, to our own Constitution. And AOC was one of these people who was really pushing for the House to consider impeachment against Donald Trump, something that her congressional Democrats, for the most part, with the usual notable exceptions, didn't play along with her, which I think is shameful, for all these people who've been getting engaged in these kind of debates. Is like, oh, is this fascism? Is Trump, the next Hitler? And then you see something like this, literal use of deadly force, and completely with zero respect for the law, for our system of government. And you don't want to, investigate or impeach this person. And I find to be pretty shameful. Trump had a huge, True Social thing that I won't read the whole thing, but he said, "Stupid AOC, one of the dumbest people in Congress, is now calling for my impeachment, despite the fact that the crooked and corrupt Democrats have already done that twice before." And she responded, "Mr. President, don't take your anger out on me. I'm just a silly girl. Take it out on whoever convinced you to betray the American people and our Constitution by illegally bombing Iran and dragging us into war. It only took you 5 months to break every promise you made." And, we're going to talk a lot in the next hour about what's going on with that conflict, what the future might look like. But I think a lot of people are going to have short-term memory about what happened over the past few days here. And, we should use words, even if you weren't a Trump voter, right? Which I wasn't, Matt wasn't. I know most people listening weren't. But these are betrayal. When the Trump administration and the Trump campaign made very, very specific claims about what they were going to do in office, and when they betray their promises, they should 100% be called out. When Trump violates the Constitution, people should call for his impeachment. It's bizarre to sit here in the country right now with the rhetoric at the height that it has been for the past few years, to see something like this that was so egregious, so deadly, so devastating, and to see, oh, you know what? As the Democratic Party, we're going to sit on the sidelines. Now, of course, we know why. It's because there are people who are very interested in actually maybe expanding on the policy that Trump has engaged in the past few days. We had Chuck Schumer the other day calling Trump taco, which stands for Trump always chickens out, saying that maybe Trump would become weak on Iran. When Trump was negotiating with Iran, you had the leader of the Senate Democrats calling him a chicken and saying that he wasn't being tough enough on it. So yeah, that's probably a big part of the reason why. But there's no reason for us not to continue to make this point to the American people as loudly, as boldly, and as repeatedly as we can, that Trump is breaking the law. He's betraying the American people, and that we shouldn't stand for it.
People are waking up to this too, in a way that there's a shift in this compared to 8 years ago, where people don't just accept Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer's assurances that they're doing as much as they can. And I think Clip and I point out, after calling Trump's strike on Iran unconstitutional, Hakeem Jeffries votes to table the impeachment bid. Jeffries was also asked if he had seen Ro Khanna's War Powers resolution, which Ro was, rightly pointed out, it should be easier to get more than 30 Democrats to sign this. And Hakeem Jeffries said, "No, I hadn't seen that." Because you know why? Because he's paid not to see that. Why do you think AIPAC gave him $800,000 last year? It was so he wouldn't see stuff like that. That's the real, and that's going to be, I think, more and more obvious to people, that there is a completely simulated opposition here, that is just not going to be relied upon. And I think it's interesting to have what Zohran sort of take this mayoral thing, but also the actual opposition there, which Democratic voters do want to see, is all in the hands of like AOC. Like you said, AOC saying it's clearly grounds for impeachment. It is. The President of the United States does not just get to help, their ally bomb somebody without going to Congress. And someone should stand up for that. Now, whether it leads to an impeachment, it won't, for reasons, we'll talk about with especially Derek Davison, because Israel's involved. And people don't want, there's just not the politicians just aren't ready to turn on Israel. But I mean, the people are.
Yeah, 100%. So, folks, we're going to go over these conversations. I will say you're going to want to stick around for the post game, where we're going to be looking at this THC meltdown. I'll just give everyone just a quick taste of this Dan Patrick meltdown, and then we'll go over to these other two conversations about the U.S.-Israel attack on Iran.
In professions that know best, from medicine to law enforcement to education, said they all support. And 105 members, mostly all Republicans, but in the Senate we had a number of Democrats who voted for it. It puzzles me why my friend Greg Abbott, Governor Abbott, would at the last minute, at about 22 minutes after 11, decide to veto this bill. I know he gave the reasons in his proclamation, but our team simply doesn't agree with those reasons, and we'll talk through that. In reading the proclamation, one can only come to this conclusion, which surprises me. The governor of the state of Texas wants to legalize recreational marijuana in Texas.
So that's just a little taste of something that is about to a press conference, by the way, that is about to devolve into pure insanity. You won't want to miss it, as well as the rest of the conversations and fun things that we're having over in the post game, which will be immediately after on the same stream. You don't have to pay anything extra because we're keeping them open this summer, but you can support us at patreon.com/leftreckoning to make sure that you get access to all future post games as well as those Sunday shows. But yeah, Matt, should we get over these conversations here?
Yeah, here is our first one with Derek Davison. Welcome back, Left Reckoners. I'm Matt Leck. With me, as always, David Griscom. Hello, David.
Hey, friends.
And we're joined by someone. I saw somebody describe Fareed Zakaria as a global thinker. This is somebody who I would describe as our global thinker.
Please don't. Thinker. I don't want to be like Fareed Zakaria. What are you doing to me, man?
This is the real thing.
Don't want
the
that
real
on me.
deal. Derek Davison of the Foreign Exchanges newsletter at FX_newsletter on Twitter and the American Prestige podcast. Derek, thanks so much for joining us.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
We typically have you on when the world is burning especially bright, and this time's no different. Trump obliterated, I think is the technical term
Absolutely.
He's using.
Yeah, he can definitely, we definitely can know that for sure.
Several sites, so mission accomplished there. We're in this weird ceasefire moment now where Trump is, he's upset, surprised to him, I guess, that Israel doesn't like honoring ceasefires. How would you describe this, I guess, liminal moment we're in right now?
Yeah, I think I actually think it's going to hold. The ceasefire. I feel fairly comfortable about that, and the reason is the signals out of Iran are already, we're going to start rebuilding homes. We're going to start, rebuilding the buildings that have been bombed. And I think if they had any doubt, and you could, argue that the Iranians have been way too optimistic about all their dealings with America and company for a while now. But that does give me some. I mean, if they're not saying, well, let's wait and see what happens here, if they're already jumping into like we're going to start putting things back together, that suggests that this is actually going to be a durable ceasefire. I don't know what was left for the Israelis to bomb, and apparently Trump told Benjamin Netanyahu after the Sunday bombing, where we obliterated, obviously, the 3 sites, that there wasn't going to be another U.S. attack, that he couldn't rely on that as much as Netanyahu might have liked. And the utility for the Israelis was, I think, at a pretty much running out. They're also reportedly running out of air defenses, which I think has been reflected in the success rate of Iranian missiles in the last few days. So there's lots of reasons why the Israelis might want to stop, and they can always come back, right? They mow the lawn. This is what they do in Gaza. It's what they do in southern Lebanon. Now it's what they do with Iran. Apparently, they can just come back in 6 months and do this all over again if they feel like it. And they'll always have the backing of the United States. They'll always have the backing of Europe. There's really no cost to them to take a pause here. So I do think that, at least for a little while, this is probably the end of things.
Well, Derek, I am curious, sorry to ask you to kind of read the tea leaves of whatever Trump's true social posts are and his kind of bizarre press conference this morning.
Right.
But do you take any stock in the kind of idea that Trump is pretty upset with Israel for, after they announced a ceasefire, basically Israel engaged in another round of bombing, potentially threatening it? I mean, do you think that Trump is kind of pushing back against them, or is it this one of these things where like Trump doesn't really have enough discipline to maybe be the president of the United States?
Yeah, I think, he's not coached enough to say nice things in public and then, 10 years later to your biographers say that fucking BB. Who the fuck does he think he is? Which is the pattern for every, previous president who's had to deal with Netanyahu. I do think he was probably frustrated. I mean, he stakes a lot on this idea that he's, even after carrying out the strikes, even after supporting, the Israeli carnage in Gaza and everything that they've done for the past week plus or in Iran, he still stakes a lot of like his demeanor, his public presentation of himself on this idea that he's a peacemaker. He's talked multiple times now about, how unfair it is, or how much he would like to get, hinted at least how much he would like to get a Nobel Peace Prize, which, I think that's real. I think he thinks he deserves one. I think when Trump says things like that, you can take him at his word. So yeah, I think so. I think he viewed that ceasefire as a crowning achievement for him, as a great diplomatic accomplishment. And then to have the Israelis, who I'm sure he feels should be, kissing his feet because he's done so much for them, and should feel indebted to him, to have them break the ceasefire, I imagine was quite frustrating for him. So yeah, I do think he was probably genuinely irritated with them in that moment.
How do you judge the constellation of politics around Trump? I saw this quote from Merz, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, last week before the strike, said Israel was, quote, doing the dirty work for Western nations by attacking Iran, and accused Tehran of inflicting death and destruction on the world. It seems like there's even less pushback. Maybe it's just like there wasn't a 9/11 where Europe would, no, there was more pushback. So that argues against my point. Why is the rest of the world so willing to, even I think Mark Carney up in Canada was like, we can't let Iran get a nuke. Whereas I remember way more pushback globally from even the West, as it's called.
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, for one, Israel is directly involved in this one. And when you're the Chancellor of Germany, when you're the Prime Minister of Canada, when you're, whoever, you don't cross that line. There's also, I would say, a more long-standing taboo about Iran than there probably was about Saddam, who you remember. I mean, we were, about 15 years, a little bit longer, I guess, but really, you didn't have to go back that far to find a time when France and the UK and the US were all selling Saddam chemical weapons precursors and, fighter jets and all kinds of things to fight Iran. So there's a much easier, there's much more ingrained kind of hostility toward Iran than there was toward Iraq. And this doesn't look like, it didn't look like there was going to be an invasion or a regime change, which is, the kind of thing that Europeans really fear because it leads to mass migration, mass outflows of people who wind up in Europe, and all of the xenophobic forces that draws out of European politics. That's the stuff that they really want to avoid. It's kind of no cost for them to support what was happening.
So yeah, I mean, and that would argue towards your point of they think this is going to be a limited thing. To me, can we rely on Israel to stop it here?
I think so. I mean, especially, if it's true that Trump said, I'm one and done, then yeah, I mean, what's left for them to do at this point, right? They've bombed some stuff. They can claim victory. They can claim they've set back Iran's nuclear program by whatever, pull a figure out of your hat, and, say it. And they've alleviated this threat. If there's no diplomatic resolution that evolves from this, if there's no nuclear deal, or if the Iranians and the U.S. don't go back to the table and get some durable agreement in place that prevents Iran, or, in theory, puts guardrails on Iran's nuclear program, then I do think we'll be back to doing this at some point. But that's, like I said, that's costless for the Israelis. They can just go back and bomb Iran now, apparently, with the precedents that's been set. The amount of damage that they were able to do, the relatively little, not talking about the Iranian retaliation, but in terms of, Israel's planes and pilots and their freedom of movement around Iranian airspace, it would take a pretty big influx of new air defense and more modern, I think, air defense systems for the Iranians to be able to change that dynamic. So the Israelis, I'm sure, feel pretty confident that they can just come back whenever it suits them.
I mean, I think that is definitely feels that this might hold at least for a short or a reasonable amount of time. But I mean, I can't really imagine that the Iranians are too stoked to go back to the negotiating table with
Why? They've got so much to gain from talking to this man who's now told them that everything he's said to them for the past 5 months was a lie. In service of Israeli military activity. I don't think so either. I don't know that they feel they have a choice. I mean, there's not a lot of avenues available to the Iranians, but to go back to the negotiating table, maybe they won't, their hearts won't be in it, let's say. But they have to approach, and I know the consensus story that seems to be emerging, and I generally agree with this, is that Trump was genuinely opposed to Israel attacking Iran, but then they did it, and they kind of, painted him into a corner, and then he saw all the Fox News coverage that was like, "Ooh, yeah, Israel, go for it," and he's like, "I want a piece of that. All my favorite TV shows are saying good things about this. I got to get on that." And then, made the decision to get more involved, and rhetorically first, and then to actually do U.S. strikes. I tend to believe that scenario is probably right, as opposed to the scenario where Trump himself has tried to, kind of put out there or insinuate that this has been a long con. But for the Iranians, they have to believe that that's possible, and that everything that Trump has said to them has been a lie. There's no basis. There's no credible basis for negotiations from their perspective. But what else do you do at this point? And so I think there will be negotiations, but I also think that the ultimate outcome of this has been, and will unfold, maybe a year from now or 2 years from now, that the Iranians will decide that being a nuclear weapons threshold state is not enough protection against just the ongoing, Israel's hegemony really in the Middle East, and its impunity to do whatever it wants, that it's just not enough of protection to say we're close to, we could develop, if we decided to develop a nuclear weapon, we could do it pretty quickly. And they're just going to say, we need a nuclear deterrent. Yeah,
I mean, this is maybe a redundant question to ask sort of in all of the months post October 7th, but is there even anything to reference with regards to international law anymore? And like that sort of ruse about we're going to constantly, I'm going to wait 2 weeks and then maybe they can talk to me. Oh, by the way, you got some bombs this weekend. Like these constant underminings of diplomacy, just generally. I imagine, like, is Taiwan feeling happy that that's all being just torn up and, thrown away? Like, what effect does this have broadly on just having a world that talks to each other?
Yeah, I mean, you're back to a in many respects, I think back to a mid 20th century world where the great powers just do what they want, and the proxies or clients of great powers do what they want because the great power will defend them from the consequences. And, everybody's just got to deal with that in their own way. And to me, yeah, it's if I were, Taiwan, or if I were any of these kind of middle powers that find themselves on somebody's shit list, I would be not terribly thrilled about where things are. And this is coming from, like, I'm already deeply skeptical of international law, but yeah, we've wrung it out at this point. Like there's nothing left of the even the farce of the rules-based order is gone. It's just like there's really nothing left on that framework.
I mean, on that note, I don't want to come off as rosy-eyed or anything like that, but I'm curious, what your reaction to the kind of congressional, let's call it, like, anti-war movement, has been over the past, especially the past day and a half. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me. And I know, like, this is preaching to the choir here. But, for all these people who talk about Trump as like this dangerous fascist or this dangerous authoritarian, and then he's literally doing something that I think, AOC has been correctly calling like illegal and trying to challenge him on impeachment. And, you have somebody like Nancy Pelosi saying, like, no, the number one goal needs to be to stop, Iran from having a nuclear weapon. I mean, any notes, or have you been surprised sort of watching just how quickly?
I mean, there's no surprise here. Like it's empty proceduralism and that's the best you can hope for from, most of the senior Democrats, leaving aside, AOC and Ilhan and Bernie Sanders and those guys. But, like Jeffries, Pelosi, Schumer, like the best you can hope for is these statements where they say, well, we believe that the president should seek congressional approval for any war that he wants to fight, and we'll give him that approval. God damn it! If he just comes to us and asks for it, we'll give it to him. Like, it's just useless. These people are beyond useless at this point.
It's crazy they think that looks like opposition to people. Like Schiff being like, oh, I didn't get the right paperwork on my desk for this.
Yeah, you didn't. I didn't get this in triplicate, so you can't do your war today. Sorry, buddy. It's insane, and it really. I don't think they understand how convoluted it is to tell people that this man is a dangerous tyrant who's undermining democracy, but also, we're really mad that he didn't give us the chance to agree with him about this, war that he's fighting. Like, why didn't he let us sign off on it? It's so frustrating. And, it's just like, it makes no sense to any ordinary person. And then they, wonder why they don't get the votes that they need.
I mean, it feels like whose line is it anyway with everything made up and the points don't matter. Like Iraq, it seemed like there was like, some kind of game being played. Now it's just like, who cares? We're going to do what we want to do.
Iraq was a show. Like, they put on a show for people. They sent Colin Powell to the UN Security Council with little vials of baking powder or whatever the hell it was to say, this is anthrax. It could kill everybody in this room. You don't know. It's so dangerous. They had the mobile chemical or mobile biological weapons labs, and Saddam has all of this stuff. And now it's just like, we're going to bomb this shit. We don't care. What are you going to do? You can't stop us. You didn't stop us then. We didn't have to go through all that effort. Like, it's just the wheels are greased for this kind of thing. It doesn't have to be a big song and dance.
I mean, that was the thing that has been so depressing over the past few days. Like, my wife is Iranian, and we've been getting, very worrying messages from people and stories and being very worried. And then, you sort of go on like TikTok or Instagram and you're seeing these kind of like, I don't know, not very well thought out memes, just kind of like phoning it in stuff about World War III. And it's just like, there's just such a cynicism, I think, across the board that like there's anything that can be done to
Because I
prevent
think people
these.
understand that there's nothing, there's no lever to pull anymore. Like there's no popular will that's involved, certainly in foreign policy. I think in politics in general, we've gotten away from really any input from the public. But certainly when it comes to foreign policy, that's been so insulated from anything that could be called democratic, accountability. That I think it's dawned on people that like it doesn't matter. They're going to do what they want. It really doesn't matter.
Very scary
Absolutely.
stuff.
Well, Derek, you have a new series with American Prestige. You're partnering with Dr. Eleanor Janega for this. Welcome to the Crusades. Yanega, sorry, my apologies. Here is the amazing artwork for that. Tell folks about this project.
Yeah, so we wanted to do a series that was not, at least not entirely about the awful things that are happening in the world right now. So we decided to do something on awful things that happened many hundreds of years ago, and we wanted to work with Eleanor and Luke, her podcasting partner. We're Not So Different. We just decided let's talk about the Crusades. There is some modern relevance because we have a defense secretary who's got Crusader tattoos because he's a dipshit. And so, there's some contemporary relevance, but it's also just a fun kind of, we do a little deep analysis of what these people were thinking, these whacked out Europeans who showed up in the Middle East and started breaking shit. The first season is out now. It's available. You're gonna have to give me a second because I need to make sure our website is working. But there was a Welcome to the Crusades. You can find it at americanprestige.supportingcast.fm, which is our website. I'm trying to see if we have, I don't think we were supposed to have like a welcome to the crusades.com basically website up, but I don't think that's ready yet. So people will have to just bear with us. It's also available. We released the first couple of episodes on American Prestige's podcast feed. So if you find us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts, you can listen to the first couple of episodes, and then if you want to listen to the rest, purchase the series. There are links, purchase links in the show notes. So that's probably the best way to do it, I guess. I don't know how people find podcasts anymore, but you can go to our website, or you can go just go directly to the podcast feeds.
And we'll have a link to that supportingcast.fm link. It is very therapeutic. I remember 8 years ago when Trump won, I'm like, how do I look away from this for a little bit? And I read about the run up to World War I, which was, to see the horror slowly descend upon the world.
That might be a little bit too relevant, I guess. But, this was a little bit of an escapist type of thing. And Eleanor's really great. She knows, a ton about this stuff. Obviously, she's an expert. And I was able to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that I studied back in grad school that I don't really get to talk about anymore. We had a good time. It's just sort of a nice free flowing discussion. We break it up into different episodes, and along the way, you kind of follow the campaign from the first call for crusade at the Council of Claremont to the conquest of Jerusalem, and it was a really fun time. I hope people enjoy it.
I mean, speaking of free flowing and Pete Hegseth, was there drinking in the Crusades? Were they able to get lit back then?
I would imagine that they got pretty lit along the way. Sure, there was cannibalism. I mean, why not? Why not have a little wine with the people that you're eating?
For the boys,
if you're starving. It's really amazing. Like one of the overarching themes, especially right after they left Constantinople and kind of got into Anatolia, almost immediately they started starving.
Of course.
death because they had no supply lines, and their relationship with the Byzantine Empire, which was supposed to be kind of backing the expedition, fell apart very quickly. And so they just started meandering around and eating everything that they could off the land, and then running out of food and winding up in several situations where they were, really on the verge of starvation. And at one point, actually falling into cannibalism to stay alive.
You don't think like maybe God doesn't want us to be doing this?
Maybe he's just testing you. That's always the response that comes back, I guess.
Well, I look forward to diving into that. Derek, thank you so much for joining us. We'll again have links to all of that work in the show notes. We'll talk to you again soon.
Sure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you. Welcome back, Left Reckoners. David here, and I can't imagine a better guest to talk about what's been going on with Iran, Israel, and our country, the U.S. Dr. Eskandar Sadeghi-Boroujerdi, thank you so much for joining us from the U.K.
Great to join you.
I mean, there's a lot to talk about. It's one of these things too, where things are moving so quickly. It kind of can be hard to know where to jump in or what's going to be accurate. But I was thinking maybe, we can sort of go through the past few hours. So yesterday, Donald Trump went on his social media website and said that peace had been declared. He said, congratulations to both Israel and Iran, which is it's just a bizarre statement. And, there was this kind of talk that maybe a ceasefire had been achieved. As of now, Israel has, did another bombing run. And this is Trump speaking this morning at the White House.
Yeah, I do. They violated it, but Israel violated it too. Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. When I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because of one rocket that didn't land, that was shot, perhaps by mistake, that didn't land. I'm not happy about that. You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
So that's something. I mean, what is your reaction to that and just the kind of events of the past few hours here?
Well, I mean, I tend not to get too hung up on the vibes of any particular tweet that Donald Trump happens to sort of throw out into sort of the media and social media more broadly, because it's very hard to read. There's just so much, psychological warfare, overload of information, disinformation. He loves to keep people second guessing and so on. But yeah, these were strong words, of course. And I think it probably shows that he was, when you sort of read it, I guess, in conjunction with other tweets of his, but yeah, he probably is a bit jittery about, the oil markets and energy markets and these sorts of things. And that I guess he's also trying to indicate to his sort of the MAGA restrainer base that actually this was just, a short and short-lived projection of American power, peace through strength. I can easily wrap this up and you don't need to worry. This isn't going to be some long drawn-out entanglement a la Iraq. And I'm not just, a kind of another neoconservative, or I haven't been bullied by the neoconservatives into carrying out another sort of regime change war, even though he was kind of, coming out with some really ridiculous tweets and coining new terms like nigger and all these sort of make Iran great again.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I don't think he knows how that actually could be understood in Farsi, actually, but I won't mention because it's actually, I can't repeat it like the company. So yeah, I think like this clearly shows that he wants I wouldn't call it a ceasefire. It isn't a ceasefire. It's a cessation. It's a mutual sort of agreement to a cessation of hostilities. And Iran said very early on that we will stop if the Israelis cease attacking us, basically. So yeah, I would call it a cessation of hostilities. I would call it like a temporary, quite fragile moment. It seems Trump obviously is trying to quite decisively, to end it for the moment. But the trouble with these things, once you've kind of crossed the Rubicon and opened this Pandora's box, it's going to be difficult to end here, I think. And I think the Iranians have no illusions, actually, that this is the end of the matter.
I mean, how could it be, frankly? It is kind of bewildering to try to get into the mind of Trump and his cohort on this. The idea that they could just, bomb Iran in the way that they did, just as a kind of one-off. And everyone says, okay, that just happened last week and we're all going to go back to the negotiating table. I just can't. It's very difficult for me to see. I mean, I'm curious, to kind of hear your perspective on, if you have any kind of insight or sense of like what the goal here from the Trump administration, and secondly, like from Israel is, because again, like the stated goals seem to make absolutely no sense. That this is just going to sort of stop Iran's nuclear program. I just don't see that happening.
Well, I think Israel did probably. I mean, the reality of it is that Israel has enjoyed impunity for so long. It's a country that's on trial at the ICJ for genocide. Its prime minister literally has a warrant for his arrest issued by the International Criminal Court. I mean, there's a consensus among genocide experts that this is a genocide. And long before that, there's an international consensus that it is both responsible for instituting an apartheid regime in the occupied territories, and illegally occupying, the West Bank, Gaza, and the Golan Heights, the territories which are occupied since 1967, illegally, in violation of Resolution 242. So, this is just a regime which has just enjoyed impunity for so long. And I think, obviously, post-October 7th, 2023, that's only intensified. And I think, they really are pushing. Netanyahu was actually bragging that, that Israel now can make claims to be a sort of a global power. And I really do think that the broader agenda here is, regional, not hegemony, which relies on some degree of consent, but actual just domination, and basically breaking the back of balkanizing or fragmenting any state which gets in their way. I think, they really want to kind of establish this, I would say, I called it like an architecture of subordination. And I really think that's kind of their end game. I think Trump's, maybe the Americans in the broad scheme of things maybe would like that outcome, but I think probably Pentagon planners and so on are somewhat smarter and a bit more realistic. So, my sense is that Trump himself doesn't want to have a long drawn out, war a la Iraq. But I do think that he was very happy to leverage and basically use Israel as an attack dog, essentially, to take out Iran's air defenses, to see if he can decapitate the regime, all these sorts of things, really pummel Iran, so that so it's basically paving the way for him, one, then to do this action, which I do think, has been planned well in advance, regarding sort of the assault on Iran's nuclear sites. But also basically to leverage that to basically force and compel Iran into capitulation. Basically, he said it multiple times, and I do take him at his word on that, at least. Total capitulation. And that was what he was very much vying for. And it hasn't worked out. And I think he was basically probably sold by the Israelis that this would be a cakewalk. And I'm sure they laid out for him their own plans, their infiltration to the Iranian sort of security apparatus, their plan to decapitate several, of the highest ranking officers, as well as one of the lead negotiators inside Iran. I think very much that maybe it was just too good an offer to pass on. I think he thought it would work. He was sold that it was work, I'm sure, by those people who have his ear. And that's obviously why he overrode his own national intelligence director and just, dismissed her as if she was absolutely a nobody. So yeah, I think that was sort of the end game. But sort of different end games here, I guess. And it hasn't worked out, and it's really unclear the degree of damage which has even been inflicted. And to be honest, if I can, just be straight, I mean, people like myself who have followed this for a very long time at this point. I mean, probably 15 years. I've been following Iran's nuclear program alone. Working on Iran, obviously I have an Iranian heritage background, but following it in an academic research capacity for almost 2 decades. So. I mean, this was very clear. I mean, multiple times, if you speak to the leading experts, also those, I'm not expert in non-proliferation, but I know the literature pretty well. And it's absolutely clear. It has been warned on countless occasions that, the Israelis definitely do not have the capacity or the ability to destroy Iran's nuclear program. And there were huge doubts that even the United States could delay it more than a couple of years. So, and we shouldn't be surprised with this outcome. And I mean, it's even more, I don't want to say concerning, but it's concerning about the complete incompetence. I mean, I don't know, maybe we're fortunate that they're so incompetent, actually, I should put it that way, that they don't even know, as I mentioned to you when we were just sort of, before we started recording, that, even the New York Times is reporting that 400 kilos of high enriched uranium, up to 60%. I mean, the United States has no idea where it even is at this point. And as I was mentioning to you, I mean, they've really made probably the calculus for Iran, such that it just makes much more sense to. I mean, they're just going to compare themselves to the Libyan case versus the case of how North Korea was treated. I mean, also just the president of Pakistan and other nuclear powers, which never basically signed up to the NPT, and think that that's the route for actual security. That's the way to ensure that your country isn't just arbitrarily just bombed and several hundred of your citizens are killed in this way. So yeah.
I mean, I want to get into how this is certainly going to change the kind of calculus here. I'm curious, as somebody who studies this, your thoughts on the past 4 years or the Biden administration, because one of the things we covered a lot on this program and talked a lot to a lot of folks was how worrying it was that it seemed that there wasn't particular interest from them to really try to figure out a way to get Iran back to the negotiating table. Obviously, it's tough when you have the unpredictability of America. If you do have this kind of extreme shifts between the Donald Trump and the Democratic president, but in a lot of ways, I find the fact that they didn't really pursue some kind of new deal, to have really created a lot of conditions that Israel has certainly been able to take advantage of, as we've seen in the past few days.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a few things, of course, like the Biden administration basically continued. I mean, maybe we have to take a couple of steps back. So, there was the JCPOA that was signed with sort of under the Rouhani administration, which was kind of like a moderate kind of government administration, which very much was elected on the platform of achieving sanctions alleviation, improving the economy, sort of greater kind of civil rights and so on, and respect for the law, and better sort of alleviating tensions with the United States. And there was this like landmark deal, under the Obama administration, signed with the P5+1. So that's like the permanent members of the UN Security Council plus Germany. Obviously, they all sort of hold nuclear weapons, except Germany, of course. That was signed. That was believed to be, Iran was abiding by that agreement. There's no doubt in that respect. It was working. And then, of course, Donald Trump came in. Even before his term started, he came in like a wrecking ball and was denouncing it as, the worst deal ever made and all these sorts of things. So he pulls out of that after, a number of years of kind of saber rattling. A while of saber rattling and taunting and threats in 2018. After then, this is sort of, in a sense, he's really responsible for where we are at this point, because that was a robust agreement. It really needs to be said that, Iran, its nuclear program was the most inspected in the world by a huge margin.
I was going to say, I was just to add, like, if we're calling it like the worst deal ever and all these things, I mean, it was quite like a humiliating deal in many ways for Iran, in the sense of like just how much surveillance they kind of agreed to under it.
Yeah. I mean, this was the criticism of many people within Iran itself, actually criticizing the deal, because not only were these sort of rigorous inspections and, Iran signed the additional protocol, all these sorts of things, but actually Iran destroyed, it literally poured concrete into its heavy water reactor at Iraq, which can never be used again. It just made it completely kind of redundant. And Iran was sort of saying, we've basically given up really concrete, meaningful, real things that we had built, like assets that we had built. And fine, we've got this kind of half-hearted sanctions relief, because the reality was there was sanctions alleviation, but then, many American corporations didn't really trust it and weren't willing to do business with Iran. And there's these secondary sanctions. So there's even this sort of threat of third-party businesses which then go try to do business with Iran, that they might actually get hunted down by the Treasury and have these huge fines sort of imposed upon them, right? So, the criticism in Iran was that, okay, we're getting this kind of half-hearted sanctions relief. We've made all of these major concessions, but then the United States, this new president comes in, he can just willy-nilly, very capriciously, can just basically impose sanctions and really hurt our economy again, which it did. It did. So actually, Javad Zarif, who was the foreign minister of the time, and the president Hassan Rouhani got lots and lots of criticism and pushback from those who, I guess, I don't like the hard line, but let's just say more hard line on the issue, more forceful on the issue. So, there was all the skepticism, and Biden basically continued that. He continued after obviously Trump pulled out. He decided to continue that. He leveraged it. He even added more sanctions on top. And then there were negotiations, but then by that time, you'd had sort of a very kind of hardline kind of president, Ibrahim Raisi, who was elected as president. And clearly, I think more broadly, a part of the political elite that mattered wanted to pursue a different line, because they just realized that diplomacy just was not working with the United States, can't be trusted, and so on. Then we have obviously, a lot of grassroots pressure and protests within Iran over this time. So in 2019, very significant protests in response to the cuts in fuel subsidies, which were very harshly repressed. Then you have kind of the women life freedom protests in 2021, 2022 emerging as well. And then we have, after that, kind of the election of a kind of a moderate, more reformist-leaning president again. And I think a broad decision on the part of a huge swath of the political elite within Iran. And they even called his government kind of Dawlat al-Wifaq, so the government of consensus kind of thing, or agreement sort of thing, where they had agreed to really pursue the diplomatic track. President Pezeshkian was elected, really. If you look at the presidential debates, which I listened to them all, he was, elected on the platform of bringing sanctions relief, pursuing diplomacy, very actively with the United States, and trying to kind of correct and rectify or improve the relationship. I don't know if you recall, actually, after he was elected, he even came to New York and he had this sort of press sort of meeting with the press, and it was really badly kind of attended, and there was really little interest, and the mood was very clearly, it's obviously, after, following following the sort of the aftermath of October, so there was just no interest in it at all. And actually there was just a lot of anticipation that Iran was going to be attacked, or Israel was going to do something, or there was going to be some kind of fracas between Iran and Israel. And there was no interest, none, by the Biden administration. And then obviously certainly not with the Trump administration. Actually, I should correct that. Actually, there was obviously then this idea that we're gonna pursue diplomacy, but there's 60 days sort of window, and that's it. Apparently, usually these things take years to hammer out, right? And actually, diplomacy does involve concessions on both sides, where there's some degree of both sides have to give something up and they get something kind of in return, right?
Exactly.
It's a mutual agreement. But then, when they were told sort of day 61, obviously then Israel attacks Iran. So, and just to add, I'll just end here, but we've had this happen multiple times now. So basically 2 days before Israel attacks Iran, Iran and the US, and obviously the Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff has been meeting in Oman, right? Israel attacks with full US knowledge that this is going to happen. I mean, Seymour Hersh actually even predicted it, and on the basis of his sources, and wrote something on his Substack. Then again, in the midst of this, then Donald Trump says, "Okay, we're going to wait 2 weeks, and then I'll make a decision." And then obviously that was very just transparently buying time to get the bombers in place to undertake the attack. And now people even pointing to, so if you go back to 2020, when Qasem Soleimani, the Major General of the Quds Force in Iran, was assassinated in Iraq, many now also see that as a ruse that was pursued by the Trump administration, whereby he had asked his Iraqi counterpart to basically facilitate negotiations or sort of discussions with Saudi Arabia, and then he was basically assassinated in the third country. So there is this sense in Iran that basically the Trump administration just cannot be trusted whatsoever, and that it's actually been weaponizing negotiations and diplomacy to actually then lull Iran into a false sense of security so they could then attack it, basically.
You know, I know you said you don't like to use the term hardliner, but, you know, it really doesn't make the position of like diplomacy seem very strong for Iranians. Like even somebody sitting on the outside, you know, on the other side here, it's like, you know, it would probably be very hard politically to say, hey, it's time to go to the international community and start negotiating now. I can only imagine there's a lot of pressure, you know, to I don't know, you know, build up as many weapons as possible and kind of like, you know, hunker down for potential, you know, more attacks in the near future.
Yeah, no, I think that's what we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at that. I think it's going to be so hard to actually make the argument to engage with the US at all. I mean, I'm sure they will, because maybe tactically it will be wise to, but I don't think they're going to be going in with the same, because I mean, Masoud Pezeshkian, the current president, I mean, he was basically a surgeon. He was a long time MP in Tabriz in Iranian Azerbaijan. He's kind of political. I mean, he's rather like a well-meaning, often statements, you know, but he's also come off as extremely kind of naive. Actually, a lot of the things he said, and just not really very politically savvy. So I think like his case will be extremely weakened. I mean, even just before this attack, actually, there's a quite powerful faction in the Iranian state called the Executives of Reconstruction, who were close formerly to the late president Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani, who really kind of had you could say arguably a rather kind of like neoliberal outlook. They thought like, you know, Iran needs to basically build relations with Europe and the United States. They need to have sort of foreign investment, foreign capital. They need to cut subsidies. They need to reorganize the state along more kind of neoliberal lines. And before this, I mean, some of their leading lights were saying, oh, no, we should just, you know, Europe and sort of the West are just interested in markets now and doing business, you know, and commercial transactions, etc. And their case as well has been shown to be just completely, you know, just not really to have any basis in reality, actually. And it shows that if you can't defend yourself, if you can't provide security, you're certainly not going to have economic development.
Well, no, I mean, well, you know, I want to ask you this, and I hope we're okay on time. I might go a little bit over, but I want, because I really need to get to Reza with you, but I wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, just get your perspective on like, you know, Iran's allies, right, in the region. I mean, you know, there has been a kind of like hollowing out. I feel like Iran feels very isolated. And I'm curious, you know, just going on to that, you know, that conversation about like neoliberalism and engaging in markets. I mean, you know, you are seeing a kind of fascinating thing happening in Syria, you know, regarding like how open the West can be, you know, if you do engage in certain kinds of, you know, deals with them. I'm just curious, you know, your perspective on where Iran kind of sits now, because from where I'm standing and what I understand, it looks like they are extremely isolated.
Well, I mean, obviously the fall of the Assad government was a huge blow. It was obviously a long-standing ally that goes back to the time of the Iran-Iraq war. It was more crucial for actually providing logistical support for Hezbollah, which obviously is in Lebanon. And Hezbollah obviously was very badly hit during the sort of the war with Israel. But I actually don't think their down and out, actually. I think that's I think people are overstating that. I think they made significant concessions, and they have, and it's definitely very much an unequal ceasefire, which the Israelis have violated at this point hundreds of times. But I think that's more because they understand the huge toll that it actually has more broadly on Lebanese society. And they also understand that Lebanese society is itself profoundly divided along both political and sectarian lines. So they don't want to kind of exacerbate that. And also, I mean, Hezbollah needs to be really understood. It's a popular movement that came out of the Israeli occupation in the 1980s. It's rooted in the communities of South Lebanon and also the Bekaa Valley in Lebanon. And they're not going to pursue objectives with which they don't have some degree of popular mandate. But yeah, needs to say, their top leadership, their Secretary General was killed. Then the successor was killed. I mean, they are undoubtedly reading from that and obviously regrouping. But I think the very fact that Iran could have potentially have called on them to actually have entered, but I think the very fact that they didn't shows that Iran didn't feel an existential threat, actually. So I think people should be cautious in that regard and not overstate it. I mean, Ansar Allah, the Houthis, basically forced the Trump administration, I would say, to restrain themselves and show that they're not going to be overwhelmed by American firepower, and they still have the option of potentially again closing the Bab al-Mandab Strait, of targeting shipping in that strait. That's a real option. But they didn't pursue it because they don't want to play all their cards, because they understand this might be a longer term thing. So that's also another thing. And I mean, Hamas, of course, is absolutely, I mean, Israel is not going to be able to destroy Hamas. But of course, they've pretty much decimated the entire this tiny, Gaza Strip, and just committed just horrific acts. But they haven't been able to kind of destroy it and quash it once and for all. I mean, either. So, absolutely, Iran has taken. And also, I should really be clear. We should be really clear. These are not proxies. Each one of these organizations actually emerged for local reasons with local objectives, and they have a local political program which they're pursuing. And they don't take orders from Iran, but they also understand that, if Iran did fall, hypothetically, it would have massive implications for them. It might have even existential implications for them, potentially. So they also do understand that, and they see their fates, as it were, as connected, even if they do not take, their marching orders from Tehran. That's just ridiculous. And it just has no basis in the historical facts.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's actually a very, very important point. Well, in the last couple of minutes, I wanted to talk about Reza Pahlavi, who's a kind of an interesting figure. I have some media from him, and that we can play here. He's basically, since Israel started bombing Iran, he's basically been going on a media tour. I'll just play this because I think this is probably one of the more despicable, things that he had said in recent days. We also have some stuff from his press conference, but I'll just play this real quick.
Great.
Are you actually saying then that Israel bombing your country, civilians in Iran being killed, is a positive thing?
I'm not saying that the targeting was meant to hurt the Iranian people. The targeting was meant to basically neutralize the regime threat. Clearly, I don't think that it was an intention of the Israeli government to attack Iranian civilians.
Are you?
So, I mean, and again, this isn't even just nitpicking. There's been plenty of statements that he's made in the past few days that have just legitimately been shocking. I mean, could you, one, react to that, and then maybe two, tell people who might not know who that is a little bit about Reza there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he is the son of the last Shah of Iran, who was overthrown in the 1979 revolution. He left, the country in his teens. And I think ever since then, he's harbored these delusions that one day he's going to have, the United States basically restore him to his birthright, quote unquote. And I have to say, I take so much issue when they address him as the crown prince. There's no monarchy in Iran. The monarchy is gone. It is gone. Get over it, basically. And I mean, I have noticed this trend though in recent years. I mean, there's good sort of work on this. It sort of shows that he was very much appealing to the Reagan administration and just basically begging them to back him. William Casey was also kind of holding him to one, you know, as a potential option to pressure Iran. But then he just, you know, I think they just found him so politically unserious, such a kind of ridiculous figure, that they never actually sort of gave him the way that he thought he was entitled to. There's actually even accounts actually in the 90s where he was basically begging to speak at the AIPAC convention. And he was like begging like AIPAC officials, please allow me to speak. And they actually had to tell him, this is like the lack of political acumen this guy has. They had to say, maybe it's not a good idea because you could actually you could potentially alienate Iranian Americans, let alone people inside Iran itself. So, I mean, I should say there is like in the last kind of maybe decade, a bit more actually, there's been this diaspora media ecosystem which has emerged around sort of these channels, which are, I mean, I think they're very clearly backed by foreign powers, basically, called Manoto TV. And they're alleged to, I should say, they're alleged to be. And I think there's also obviously reports that people can look up. But Manoto TV is one, and the other one is Iran International. And both of these channels like really, really boost him. They really kind of present this absolutely whitewashed image of the Pahlavi era, and they present it as if like everybody in the 60s and 70s was like, you know, just flush with wealth, opulence, unlimited cash. It was just this sort of I guess Havana in the days of Batista kind of era. Yeah, it was. It's really, so they presented this absolutely whitewashed image of that era, and I think they have managed to. It's quite interesting their strategy as well. They initially sort of engaged in lots of like popular culture sort of thing. They kind of did like singing shows, and then they also did like cooking shows and things like this. And then obviously lots of people started watching this for entertainment purposes. And then they started hitting them with the kind of the political propaganda. So there is this kind of ecosystem which kind of boosts him in Persian quite a bit. And that is real. I don't think that should be undersold, right? But I do think this kind of latest just egregious kind of performance on his part. And I should say over the last couple of years, it's become very clear that he's basically done everything. I think basically pledged fealty to Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israelis.
Well,
yeah.
No. I mean, I want to ask you this, and obviously, this is partly speculation, but, there's been a lot of people talking that, he might not actually be doing these media appearances like on the orders, suggestion of anyone else, right? When he's going there and kind of defending Israel's bombing of his own country, he might just actually be doing that because he thinks it's going to help him out versus, somebody from Israel being like, hey, go on TV and say that it's okay, actually.
Yeah. I'm sure it's a mix of factors. I'm sure he's probably getting boosted by, I guess, Israel's partisans. I mean, I've seen lots of kind of pro-Israeli Hasbara media kind of platforming him, interviewing him, even before this, and really pushing him very, very hard. And then he made a trip to Israel. He met with Netanyahu. He went to Jerusalem. He did all of the sort of this sort of whistle-stop tour around the country. And just spoke about these kind of the shared values and all these sorts of things. So he did that, and I think he is being boosted, absolutely. But also, I mean, he sees that he probably has some also some sense that if he really gravitates and sort of really sort of gets proximate and close to the Israelis, that he probably stands a better chance of maybe the Americans taking him seriously as well, and potentially maybe AIPAC also then supporting him and boosting him with American politicians as well. I mean, maybe that's his theory, which wouldn't surprise me. So I think he's really put a lot of store in this. I think maybe he really did believe that, there's going to be regime change. The Israelis are going to go, they're going to bomb everybody, and he's just going to be dropped in, and he's going to be the new king of Iran.
Yeah. I won't subject everyone to watching all of his media appearances, but there are some where he kind of like, I don't know, very graciously says, I will only go and, rule over this country, rule over the ash if I'm asked to by everybody. It's just like, okay.
Yeah. And this is what the Jerusalem Post is like openly, like the editorial board is saying that Trump should basically attack Iran and balkanize the country. So
horrifying. I mean, I think it's kind of apparent here, but and I think you're also right in noting that like he's kind of a weird figure that kind of gets trotted out, every once in a while. But I'm just curious if you think that this moment might just be kind of politically just ending for him as a figure. I mean, they might still use him, but anybody who's maybe could be converted on this, but I'm curious your thoughts there.
Yeah, no, I think it has hurt him very badly. I think these performances where he was literally saying that people want the Israelis to come in and attack the country, and they approve of this, and every strike is met with and greeted with cheers and gratitude. Yeah, I think that's really been detrimental to his political marketing and branding exercise. I think it really has hurt him. A lot of people have kind of compared him to like the Mujahideen Khalid, the People's Mujahideen, and Masoud Rajavi, who sided with Saddam Hussein in the Iran-Iraq war. And they really do see it as a huge betrayal. I've even seen sort of like, dyed-in-the-wool monarchists like attacking him and saying, you're a disgrace to your father and grandfather and so on. So, no, I think it probably has hurt him a fair bit, but, useful idiots will continue to be used. I'm sure they'll continue to platform him and continue to sort of try and sort of promote him. But no, I do think it has really hurt him. And I also more importantly, really, I think he's a kind of rather risible figure. But I also do think, there were some people in Iran, they're small, but there were some people who kind of did think or did harbor this illusion that maybe the US could come in and the Israelis might come in and do these sort of surgical strikes. And it's not actually going to have this, broader human toll. And what we've seen is, a friend of mine's uncle was killed.
I'm sorry.
Absolutely, just beyond tragic, truly tragic. And the pregnant wife, it's just absolutely horrific. We've seen families killed whole families killed. We've seen pregnant women bombed in their cars. We've seen all these kind of horrific things. And I think, the latest casualty figures, it's over 800 people killed. And then it's over 3,000 injured. I don't have the exact figures to hand, but it's around that. It's it's not small for like an 11-day or so war, right? So I think it's actually dispelled completely this idea that Iranians can count on any foreign savior whatsoever. And I would always argue that maybe it wasn't a majority by any means. It was a fairly small constituency which maybe believed that. But I think it's really been dispelled now. Hopefully, absolutely vanquished once and for all.
Yeah, the violence has been horrendous, and this kind of idea that you're going to be able to bomb yourself into any kind of, peace or democracy has just been proven wrong time and time in history, and yet people still cling to it. Thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything that, you'd like people to sort of keep their eye out on or keep up with, or anything that you'd be watching in the next few days? I know it's like, I don't want to ask you to predict the future because things have been moving so much, but I am curious.
I would just say, take the current cessation facilities with a pinch of salt, realize that it is very fragile. And if you can, on your end, maybe lobby your congressman or whatever for peace and actually try and apply some popular pressure. And my main worry, to be honest, is that the Trump administration will now sell this as limited engagement and that they can do this on a more regular kind of basis. And I'm kind of worried that, in a sense, a red line has been crossed, the Rubicon has been crossed, and that maybe bombing Iran will be seen as a new normal kind of thing. That's one thing that I am concerned with. And that we have precedent there with respect to Iraq and other places. So that is one concern that I have. And the other big concern that I have, I'm pretty sure the neoconservatives and the Netanyahu administration and the sort of the hawks and the warmongers in the US government and elsewhere are basically going to say at this point, oh, hey guys, we haven't actually destroyed the stockpile. Iran's nuclear program isn't destroyed. We've only done it. So we actually at some point will have to go in, or we will have to do a much more a more serious, expansive kind of intervention. And that is, I think, what people should be concerned about and watch for the telltale signs. Because I don't think Netanyahu is going to be satisfied with this. Because, Netanyahu is somebody who feeds on destruction. He needs to kind of export war and destruction, instability to the region to basically deflect from what he's doing in Gaza, and also from his own criminality, just more, internationally, but also even within the Israeli polity, multiple corruption charges and so on. So he really thrives on this, and the United States government, unfortunately, has kind of removed all the guardrails.
Yeah, we'll be watching that and appreciate you coming on and sharing your insight here. Eskandar, thank you so much.
Great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Appreciate it.
Great job, David. Great to hear, Eskandar.
Thanks, friend. Yeah, no, it was very, very nice having him on the program, and tackling some heavy stuff, but it's always good to know what's going on, and also to be able to shit on Reza, who I find actually I don't think I have it clipped, so I don't know if I can pull it out for us right now, but none other than Patrick Bet David has just recently on his podcast. Condemned Reza, said that he's not a quote number one man. He might be a good number two man. He might be a great professor, but he's not going to be able to do what is needed in Iran. And what Iran needs to do is to kind of take the attitude of a startup and assemble the best guys. And maybe out of those best guys, they can find a number one. So
do you think Patrick thought, they put some like schmuck in charge of Iraq? In charge of the provisional authority, like maybe Valuetainment East, like
wow, yeah, that could be interesting. I mean, I just think it's funny if you have ever seen his we must have done on the show his interview with Reza Aslan. People don't know, like renowned scholar, and Patrick Bet Davis is like, do you not love Shaw? Do you not love Shaw? Remember Shaw? Shaw was so great. Funny. Reza's like, my dad was tortured by the Shaw. I don't really know. Actually, I don't like him very much. Something else. Well, on that note, Matt, should we get to the story here?
Yeah. Let's do it. I am excited to hear the THC crash out in Texas.
Oh my God. Okay. So folks, people have been very tuned into this, and as they should. I mean, it's an interesting story. So to catch folks up, if you don't know, basically the Texas Senate passed a THC ban, and just the quickest recast for folks who don't know, what is it, 2018, there was that kind of national hemp bill that went on through the federal level, which legalized hemp. And because it's very difficult to test these things for THC, like low levels were basically de facto legalized across the country. That's why if you've been to states that don't have recreational marijuana, you might have seen, CBD, THC drinks, things like that. Texas being one of them. Texas is obviously a huge state. Massive industry pops up in the past few years, and Dan Patrick made banning hemp, banning THC one of his number one priorities for this most recent legislative session. Gets through with the votes that are needed, and it goes to Greg Abbott. And there's this big campaign for many people to get Abbott to veto it. And Abbott had three choices. He could have signed it into law, vetoed it, or not signed it into law, but it would have gone to effect basically without his blessing, giving him a little bit of a shield. Well, Sunday, minutes before the deadline, Greg Abbott vetoed the bill, causing this press conference from Dan Patrick, where he was kind of crashing out. And let's look at it a little bit, and we can add some more info about what's going on with the status of THC in Texas. But let's start with this one here.
In professions that know best, from medicine to law enforcement.
So he's talking about
to
the
education,
groups that endorse his bill.
They all support. And 105 members. Mostly all Republicans, but in the Senate, we had a number of Democrats who voted for it.
Incredible, by the way. Yes,
it puzzles me why my friend, Greg Abbott, Governor Abbott, would at the last minute, at about 22 minutes after 11, decide to veto this bill. I know he gave the reasons in his proclamation, but our team simply doesn't agree with those reasons, and we'll talk through that. In reading the proclamation, one can only come to this conclusion, which surprises me. The governor of the state of Texas wants to legalize recreational marijuana in Texas. That's the headline, folks, because that's what his proclamation does. Now, whether it's unintentional and he didn't think through it,
so
or whether it's intentional.
Yeah, so Mr. Greg Abbott, according to Dan Patrick, the message that he's sending to the nation and to the state of Texas is that he is interested in legalizing marijuana, which, would be a nice thing, I think. I think a lot of people would actually really appreciate that. if if he were to do that. I think a lot of the weird situation that we have now in Texas, where we have legal marijuana from our neighbors and don't have it in our own state.
I mean, it's the land of the free. So I mean, what can you really say?
So this this press conference very quickly devolves. So first, I mean, we played it at the beginning, so it might not have hit as hard the second time. But the fact that Greg Abbott here, that Dan Patrick here opens up this conference saying that Greg Abbott's intention is to legalize marijuana is pretty new. Is a pretty bold claim here. Now, we can go here, and he talks about the fact that he believed that Greg Abbott was going to support him when it came to this bill.
So at the end of the day, what puzzled me was the last time I talked to the governor in the Capitol before session, he said, "Don't worry about the bill." He said, "Your bill is fine." That's what he told me in front of witnesses. In fact, he asked a couple of lawyers on my staff, he said, "Can you give me some answers I can give, because when I sign this, I need some answers to give." So what happened? Who convinced him? On his staff, from the outside? To kill Senate Bill 3? Look, we'll work with the governor. We'll see what happens in the special session. But where has he been all session?
So the answer to that question, by the way, is he was working very hard to veto and cut school lunches for poor children in Texas over the summer, along with giving $1 million a tax incentive to Hollywood millionaires to make movies in the state of Texas.
Oh, was John Voight involved in that? Probably Trump's liaison to Hollywood. I mean, where was he? He was talking shit about your stupid crusade here that you can't even get Republicans on board with.
Well, I mean, in fairness, Matt, he did. He got the votes in the ledge, but that's because he basically was threatening folks. I mean, this is something that has been made very, very clear, not just on this bill, but on others, that guys like Dan Patrick, they play ball a little bit dirty, right? But just to give people a little bit of context here of where it stands, in his declaration, Greg Abbott, so in his veto, Greg Abbott has also called for a special session, which means the clown show will continue. The legislators will be forced to return to the Capitol and to address some of the issues that Greg Abbott has with this bill. So not necessarily out of the woods yet when it comes to THC ban, but he very specifically calls for setting up kind of common sense regulations around the THC thing. Because look, there are plenty of things that are probably that do come about when you have a kind of haphazard market for this kind of thing, where you have these things right next to a school and things like that. So I'm sure they will put in some kind of provisions and limits about when and where you can buy these kind of things. Something that Dan Patrick found to be, odious. So it will continue, but I don't think that we will get a full-on ban. Now, Dan Patrick, again, he keeps on saying that he's not upset about this and that he doesn't take it personally, but he very, very much does, as we can get into in this next clip here, because the last bits that we'll play here are full-on crash out moments of this press conference. And for people who've been watching us cover this over the past couple of months, Dan Patrick has already had a few crash out moments here, but these are pretty exceptional. First thing he wants to ask about, what does this mean for the state of Texas if we legalize marijuana? Which, by the way, this is like the THC stuff, Delta 8, Delta 9, whatever it's called, not the real deal good green that I know some of our friends who are watching right now are enjoying.
He talks about basically that we have to leave the status quo where it is. In other words, if we regulate this, and what do you regulate? You regulate things that are legal. And that's why I said, and I'm stunned that he wants to legalize marijuana in the state of Texas. So I'm not having a bad day. Texas is having a bad day, because if we become Washington
People are pretty
State
happy
or
about
Oregon
this.
or Colorado, on products that we cannot possibly test in 8,000 or 9,000 locations with the small law enforcement we have doing their best. You can hit one here, one there. Who are we as a state? We think we're going to attract business here if we got a bunch of people high on marijuana at very high levels?
Probably would be hot. I mean, probably would be hard to attract people to do business in like a city like Austin. For example, movie like Dazed and Confused.
I'm sorry, David. I genuinely think it's, the people are moving to Texas, or at least have been. I would not move there because of that reason. Like, I don't want to live in a backwards ass place that a cop's going to get up my ass because I want to smoke THC. That is insane to me. And I imagine I'm not the only person who would make that sort of decision.
Is that who wants to come here and build their plant here?
Oh, there you go, man.
Open up a business, move their family here? We're not Colorado. And we're not Oregon. And we're not Washington State. We're Texas.
Less welcoming.
And I will not sign a bill that legalizes marijuana in Texas.
Which, by the way, very, very weird phrasing, just because, that is not within his power. Now, he does control the Senate, right? He is in control of the Senate, but to sit here and say he would not sign a bill, I don't know, is a little bit premature here. If Dan Patrick maybe has some plans for the near future. We'll see. And actually, the rumor is that this is probably Dan Patrick's last go. Not that he's going to run for governor, that he just might, ride off into the sunset. Hopefully, no one will be smoking near him. Let's hear the rest of this before we get to our last clip.
I will not gavel it down, because that's what he's asking the legislature to do. And here's the box he's put us in, folks. This is the box. So when he says he just came to it, he told me, well, I just kind of made the decision Saturday and this came late. Again, where was his staff and where was he? If he'd have worked with us through the session, maybe we could have addressed some of his issues and maybe we could have answered some of his questions.
All right. You ready for this last bit, Matt?
I am. I just think it's funny, this tone of like, where was he? It's like, bro, he's not that into you. And it's weird looking at this from an outsider. Like, why are we listening to a lieutenant governor?
Well, yeah. I mean,
I know, like,
Texas
you've got
politics,
into
right?
that, the constitutionality or whatever the hell happened to elevate this sort of office to where, like, he's able to do this sort of stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, he has tremendous amounts of power and he uses it for sure. And I mean, the funny thing is, like, he really has been focused. I mean, he did the stuff we've covered on this program where there was all that lottery fraud that was going on in the state here. This is somebody, for people who don't know, was a radio host for years. Knows how to put on. I will say, I enjoy watching these press conferences myself. He knows how to put on a show, and he has tremendous influence. And I think he's very, very upset. I feel like he feels personally betrayed because he really, really wanted to get this done. And I'm sorry. I mean, Matt, come on. This is as simple as it gets. I was talking to some journalist friends of mine, people who don't even do, like YouTube or podcast stuff, Matt. And every single story about this has just gotten like monster views and monster engagement because people were just so upset with it because it's so absurd. Most people are pretty tired with the drug war. People are tired with the regulations. Even conservatives aren't really into this. And one of the things that's notable about this is, like, a lot of these THC companies that Patrick has been attacking, are like veteran run, kind of conservative, tough guy branding stuff. So it's one of those things that just like feels like such an overreach for folks. Now, again, I would like it if people maybe got as involved about this, about like the fact that Greg Abbott is like taking food out of children's mouths, right? Or Operation Lone Star or things like this. But this is just one of those kind of common sense issues that to touch it, to do what Dan Patrick is doing is so vintage, so not with the times. That I think, is a massive political liability. And look, maybe Dan Patrick is about to ride off into the sunset, finish up, right? And this is his last little crusade. Greg Abbott, I think, has more long-term and lofty goals for himself, which is probably why he doesn't want. He's like, yeah, I'm not doing the fucking marijuana ban in 2025.
Well, that's the fascinating thing is I would have expected him, because of how many people are happy at this decision, to do a little grandstanding. But I guess it points out that, this is a veto of a bill passed by members of his party. So he can't be like, we're standing up for small businesses and freedom, which seems kind of obvious, like a layup to me, but it has to be, oh, it's unconstitutional and we got to, it's very Democrat move kind of
It is.
to go into formalism.
So, and I want to play the last bit of this just because it is so incredible. Where he goes at the end, it's something else. But just do due diligence here. One of the big reasons that Abbott says that he's vetoing it was because he thought it was going to get gummed up in the courts. A lower court just ruled in favor of Arkansas's similar THC ban. So Dan Patrick has been having a field day for the past couple of hours, saying like, Mr. Lawyer, Mr. Supreme Court Justice, Greg Abbott, should have maybe thought a little bit more about the law here. But let's get into this kind of stuff because, again, like, I think everybody at this point is there. Very few people are in support of this kind of THC ban. What is wild about it is that to justify it, Dan Patrick has had to rely on just ludicrous arguments. One, that this THC is causing people to die, to kill themselves. Really kind of sensational stories. Oftentimes that he's just kind of asserting, these kind of things. He ends this press conference in a tirade that is just incomprehensible, frankly. And we can maybe finish up this segment with this.
Amiable discussion. Look, I'm not mad at the governor. But I'm not going to legalize marijuana in Texas. And if people want to vote me out of office for that, so be it. Not going to do it. Here's the other thing. We have no idea who's making this product. Are they terrorists? Is this a terrorist money laundering scheme in Texas? Is it a cartel money laundering scheme? Someone told me I better watch my step. That's what someone told me. I better watch my step. Because this whole...
So I'm sorry, we got to pause it here for a second. Dan, you're the lieutenant governor of Texas. You're
Someone's threatening you.
People are threatening you, and you're just sort of like, all right, just make a little note. I'll remember this in case my bill gets vetoed later. This is serious, man. You're saying that like terrorist cells are out here walking around the streets of Austin, threatening you that if you don't, vote the right way or get the right result from this. What are we talking about? Insane. Also, it is a fundamental lie to sit here and say we don't know where this stuff is coming from. I mean, this stuff is highly regulated. You can go and by the way, it's regulated like by Texas law. It's not Wild West stuff. There's more information on these products than there is on a can of beer, right? About what goes into them, all this kind of stuff. So just ludicrous here to sit here and be like, oh, maybe the terrorists are making Cap and Crunch THC treats.
It's so brainless because, again, like I keep mentioning, Al Capone and that whole thing, the whole smuggling booze was because of prohibition.
Oh, did I lose you, Matt? Okay.
It's when they're here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
If there's one thing that cartels like, it's when there is greater barriers, because what that does is increases their profitability. And this is all that's happened. This is why the cartels are scarier and scarier in terms of like their tactical abilities and stuff like that, is because they can pay for it because no one else can do it. And everyone, like, this is regulating it is the only way you can know where this shit's coming from.
No, I mean 100%. I mean the idea that there was no marijuana in Austin, Texas, let's say, before 2018 or whatever, is just an incredible thing to say. And you know what? Yeah, you can trace where this THC is coming from now. Not back in the day, for sure. Anyway, let's get this here.
The industry again saying, well, these are mom and pop businesses. No, they're not. There may be a few. This is all orchestrated. As I said, over 3 or 4 years, 8,000 to 9,000 shops open up. They all look the same. They all have the same products. They all have the same footprint. They're all built in the same spot around schools, or most of them. No, that wasn't a coincidence, Rudy. That's organized crime behind it. Very likely. Very likely.
What are you talking about?
I mean, what kind of state do we want? What kind of culture do we want?
Why don't you tell us, by the way, why doesn't Dan Patrick from Baltimore, Maryland tell us what kind of state and culture that we want in Texas? Let's hear it.
Want everybody high? I mean, everyone will tell you in those other 3 states, work product is going down. Everywhere you go, it smells like grass. It's awful. The last time I went to Colorado, I didn't want to go back anymore. I don't want that for Texas. Gaming and sports betting, that's a
And honestly, we can leave it at that. Actually, no, we can't, because he says something absolutely insane. Yeah, he says something absolutely insane at the end of this. Yeah,
because just to put this into context, he's sort of against the betting thing, but Abbott is more for it. But he's not as against it as the THC thing. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, like the Republicans have actually always kind of been against casinos in Texas. We don't have them, and the sports betting, which is great. I think, let's not legalize that garbage, right? Abbott has kind of hinted a little bit that he might be like open to it. He said that he'd consider things if they were brought to him. So this is Dan Patrick putting a little shade at Greg Abbott here. But that's almost secondary, because what he says next is truly something else.
People's choice, whatever they want to do. If that happens, it happens. But this is life and death. This is life and death, Rudy. This destroys lives. This reaches a whole nother level.
So, more insanity from the lieutenant governor of Texas.
I'll just say gambling, not great for your health.
No, it's definitely not. There's plenty of things that aren't great for your health. Again, starving children is not great for the health of our children. Defunding our schools so that religious fanatics can try to get into our public school money probably has pretty serious life and death things. Some guy getting like shitty low-level THC is not really life and death. Sorry. And it's pretty incredible to see the passion that this guy has for it. When the things that he doesn't have passion for, like the children murdered in Uvalde, which they continue to have done nothing about, despite grandstanding a little bit here and there after it happened. Nothing. In fact, these motherfuckers. Sorry, I just forgot about this. What they did, Matt, that I think is one of the cruelest things. Whatever regulation, tough. Figure out the politics of that. Fraud, Texas. You should at least be able to have a hearing for a mother or a father of a child who gets murdered in an elementary school. I think that's pretty basic. And you know what they did at the Texas Ledge, Matt? You know what they did to them? They kept on moving their speaking times around. So these are people who drove into Austin from Uvalde, right? Multiple hour drive. And they sat there and waited all day. Oh, it's not going to be at 2. Oh, it's not going to be at 5. Oh, it's not going to be at 10. These people are sitting there all day long. Oh, and yeah, at 3:30, 4 a.m. in the morning, they let those parents speak. That's disgusting, right? So that's the urgency that these people have for, dead children, which apparently is a big deal, right, to him. That's the urgency they have for that. But they have plenty of time and attention to this kind of nonsense. But again, Abbott vetoed it. There's going to be a session. They're going to debate it. They'll probably put, you can't buy on Sunday. You can't buy at this time. You can't have one by the school, blah, 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 blah. But it looks like Dan Patrick lost this one pretty big. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who are pretty happy about that.
I mean, I've seen celebrations on it, to be honest. I will admit, I ain't doing Delta 8.
I know. That's the other thing that kind of, I know people care about this, but I'm just sort of like, I don't know. Whatever, don't take away my freedoms.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if I don't partake. Well, should we grab some discourse before we run? Unless you had something else, Matt.
No, let's do it.
I'm sorry, I don't know why this mic is auto changing on me. I hope it hasn't been too distracting. Just give me 1 second. So, folks, we get those questions by y'all going into the into the Discord Q&A. That's for patrons only. Patreon.com/leftreckoning to get access to it. We have made these post games this summer open to the public because we want to have a little fun with y'all, spread the cheer while we all deal with how hot is it in New York City right now, Matt? 100?
It was 103.
Damn. So a little solidarity.
Now it's cooled off a little bit now, I think. Now it's down to 94.
We're all living under difficult conditions, and the heat is included, and that's why we wanted to open this up. But we do love our patrons, and we'll take a couple questions from them today. Our good friend Umberto Ionian says, today marks 2 months to go until college football kicks off. Yes, sir. I just wanted to give my best wishes to the boys in Texas. I know we say this every season, but I think this year our beloved A&M is going to make state, no matter how hard things get. Brings me joy knowing the Aggie Nation will never die. I guess the Aggie Nation will never die, despite all of our attempts and hopes that it will sometime soon. Matt,
just a little bit on news here. Stephen Miller report per Rolling Stone
out
has a financial stake in Palantir. So just cool how all this stuff.
That is awesome, bro.
Yeah, so that's fine.
Matt Umberto says, you'll always have your lifetime 2K score. As we gamers know, the world needs ditch diggers too. I don't know.
It's a lifetime 2K score. I mean, is that the amount of hours I put on each
I don't know.
one? 'Cause I don't want people to know that.
Joe Snuffy says, the most amazing aspect of our foreign entanglement of the last week and a half has been to know how impotent the American empire has appeared to be. One of the reasons why we've avoided this exact scenario with Iran for 25 years is because while threatening to destroy Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities made our empire look strong, it was understood by the smarter managers of our empire that proving to the world we can't back up that threat would make us look weak as fuck. That's what Trump has done, and it doesn't matter whether Israel or the U.S. violence that maybe ceasefire. We have now the damage to the world's perception of our power has been done. Empires die when they can't back up their threats, and after this limp-fisted stop fight with Iran, people are going to start calling our bluffs.
I think that's possible, but I also think we just, like what Derek said, is, I mean, it kind of, you see Russia doing this in Ukraine. We're just in an era where great powers are, going to lob missiles around more and, have some justification for it, but ultimately there's no global order to it at all.
And last one,
China just hopefully stays restrained, because I don't know what America would do if there's a Taiwan situation to deal with right now.
Oh yeah. And just really fast for folks, we're only taking questions from our Discord members, which is a Patreon only tier. We've opened up the post game to everybody else, but we're not looking at the YouTube or the Twitch chats for this. We do sometimes, but not right now. Kowalski from Nebraska says, I'm typically a summer guy, but I'm starting to think summer might just have a really good PR team. 105-degree temperatures with 35-mile-an-hour winds over the weekend, which was not what I call pleasant. The sun burning, the humidity that can drop you like a sniper. It's all in the marketing. Yeah, it's probably a big conspiracy. Though, fuck it. I love summer, man. Who gives a shit? It's hot, dude. Go for a swim, have a beer, go to a barbecue. Everyone's whining about this shit. No, summer is so much better. Days are longer. It's nice. You're free. You get out of school. Enjoy it. Don't complain. Don't let the assholes get you down. And this kind of anti-summer propaganda that I've been seeing more and more of these days, affects something.
My AC's working. My AC's working. So
yeah, there you go. Matt's AC is working. We're hoping that Zohran is about to be the mayor of the great city of New York. Folks, that's it for us. Matt Leck and David Griscom. We're going to head out of here, folks. We appreciate all of you so much. Your support allows us to do this. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning. All the patrons, people who have supported us over the years, it means the world to us. We have some really cool things that are coming up in the next couple of months. I can't wait to announce them for all of y'all. But big things coming in the Left Reckoning universe, friends. But until then, take care, and we'll see you soon. We'll see you on Sunday. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning to get access to the Sunday show.
Peace.